inflation. It's a word that gets thrown around a lot, often with a groan. We hear it on the news, read it in articles, and feel its effects in our daily lives. But what is it exactly? Why does it happen, and how does it affect us? In the simplest terms, inflation means prices are going up. This can be due to various factors, such as increased demand for goods and services, higher production costs, or even government policies. Think of it like this: your dollar doesn't stretch as far as it used to. What you could buy for $1 a few years ago might cost you $2 today. Remember when a gallon of gas was under $3? It wasn't that long ago, but it feels like a distant memory. Yet those were the days. We often reminisce about the past, not just for the memories, but also for the lower prices. Inflation means that same gallon of gas might cost more now. This increase in prices isn't limited to just fuel. And it's not just gas. Everything from groceries to rent can be affected. The cost of living rises and our purchasing power diminishes. Inflation is a fact of life in most economies. It's a global phenomenon, impacting countries differently based on their economic policies and conditions. It's usually a gradual process, not a sudden spike. Over time, these small increases accumulate, leading to noticeable changes in our expenses. But even small increases in prices can add up over time, impacting our wallets and our lives. We might not notice it immediately, but over months and years, the difference becomes clear. Families often have to adjust their budgets, cutting back on non-essential items to make ends meet. This can lead to difficult choices and sacrifices. Consumers become more price-conscious, seeking out discounts and deals to save money. This behavior can influence market trends and business strategies. Businesses too feel the pinch. Higher costs for raw materials and labor can lead to increased prices for their products, which in turn affects consumers. Governments and central banks play a crucial role in managing inflation. Through monetary policies, they aim to keep inflation at a manageable level, balancing economic growth with price stability. Education about inflation is essential. Understanding its causes and effects can help individuals make informed financial decisions and prepare for the future. Knowledge is power. By staying informed, we can better navigate the challenges that inflation brings and find ways to mitigate its impact on our lives. Communities can come together to support each other during times of economic uncertainty. Sharing resources and knowledge can make a significant difference. While inflation is an inevitable part of economic progress, resilience and adaptability can help us weather its effects. Together, we can find ways to thrive despite the challenges. Let's talk about inflation in a way that doesn't require an economics degree to understand. Remember that $5 latte you used to get every morning? Now it's $6. That's inflation, baby. Or how about that used car you've been eyeing for months? It seems like the price keeps going up, even though it's getting older. Inflation doesn't discriminate. These everyday examples highlight how inflation slowly but surely impacts our spending power. It's like a sneaky tax on our hard-earned cash, eroding its value. Inflation isn't just about higher prices, it's about winners and losers. If your salary keeps pace with inflation, you might not feel the pinch as much. But if your wages stay stagnant while prices rise, you're losing ground. Inflation can also eat away at your savings. That money you're stashing away for a rainy day, it won't buy as much in the future if prices keep climbing. So, inflation can create a real sense of economic uncertainty. It's no wonder people get worried when they hear that inflation is on the rise. Section 4. The root of the problem, why prices rise. Now let's play economist for a minute. Don't worry, it's painless, I promise. There are a few main culprits behind inflation. One is called demand pull inflation. It's like a popularity contest gone wrong. Imagine everyone wants the latest gadget, but there aren't enough to go around. Prices skyrocket. That's demand outstripping supply. Another culprit is cost push inflation. This happens when the cost of producing things goes up, like when raw materials or labor costs rise. Businesses then pass those costs on to us, the consumers. Section 5, inflation through the ages, a historical perspective. Inflation is nothing new. It's been a thorn in humanity's side for centuries. Remember the Roman Empire? They had inflation too. In fact, their emperors tried and failed to control it by debasing their currency. Not exactly a winning strategy. Then there's the mother of all inflations, The hyperinflation in Weimar Germany after World War I. Prices rose so astronomically that people needed wheelbarrows full of cash just to buy bread. These historical examples show just how disruptive and damaging runaway inflation can be. It's a stark reminder of why keeping inflation in check is so important. Section 6. Taming the inflation beast: government and central bank strategies. In this section, we delve into the intricate dance between government policies and central bank maneuvers aimed at keeping inflation in check. So how do we keep inflation from spiraling out of control? This is a question that has puzzled economists and policymakers for decades. Inflation, if left unchecked, can erode purchasing power, destabilize economies, and create uncertainty in financial markets. Governments and central banks have a few tools at their disposal. One of the primary tools is interest rates. By adjusting interest rates, central banks can influence the cost of borrowing money, which in turn affects consumer spending and business investments. Think of it like the price of borrowing money. When interest rates are low, borrowing is cheaper, encouraging people and businesses to take out loans and spend more. Conversely, when interest rates are high, borrowing becomes more expensive, which can dampen spending and investment. When inflation is high, central banks often raise interest rates to cool down the economy and slow down borrowing and spending. This is a common strategy used to prevent the economy from overheating and to bring inflation back to manageable levels. It's like tapping the brakes on a runaway train. By increasing interest rates, central banks aim to slow down the pace of economic activity, much like how a train's brakes slow down its speed. Governments can also try to control inflation through fiscal policy, like adjusting taxes or government spending. Fiscal policy involves the use of government revenue collection and expenditure to influence the economy. It's a delicate balancing act, like trying to walk a tightrope while juggling chainsaws. On one hand, increasing taxes can reduce disposable income and curb spending, which can help lower inflation. On the other hand, reducing government spending can also slow down economic growth, which might not always be desirable. History has shown us that the effectiveness of these strategies can vary. For instance, during the 1970s, many countries faced stagflation, a situation where high inflation and high unemployment occurred simultaneously. Traditional tools like interest rate adjustments and fiscal policies had limited success in addressing this complex issue. Today, with the advent of advanced economic modeling and data analysis, central banks and governments are better equipped to predict and respond to inflationary pressures. They use a combination of historical data, economic indicators, and sophisticated algorithms to make informed decisions. It's also important to note that in our interconnected global economy, inflation is not just a domestic issue. International factors such as global supply chain disruptions, commodity price fluctuations, and foreign exchange rates can all influence domestic inflation. This adds another layer of complexity to the task of managing inflation. Therefore, international cooperation and coordination among central banks and governments are crucial. By working together, countries can better manage the global factors that contribute to inflation and ensure more stable economic conditions worldwide. In conclusion, taming the inflation beast requires a multifaceted approach involving both monetary and fiscal policies. It's a continuous effort to maintain a delicate balance, ensuring economic stability and growth while keeping inflation in check. Section 7. The two sides of inflation: Boon or Bane. Inflation is a complex and often misunderstood economic phenomenon. It can be both a blessing and a curse, depending on its level and the context in which it occurs. Believe it or not, a little bit of inflation can actually be a good thing. Moderate inflation is often seen as a sign of a healthy economy. It indicates that demand for goods and services is growing, which can lead to increased production and job creation. It encourages people to spend and invest, which helps the economy grow. When people expect prices to rise in the future, they are more likely to make purchases now rather than later. This increased spending can stimulate economic activity and lead to higher levels of investment. It's like a gentle nudge to keep the wheels of commerce turning. Businesses may also benefit from moderate inflation, as it can lead to higher revenues and profits. This in turn can encourage them to expand and hire more workers. But too much inflation is like eating too much candy. It might seem fun at first, but it'll give you a stomachache later. High inflation can have serious negative consequences for the economy. It can erode the purchasing power of money, making it more difficult for people to afford the goods and services they need. High inflation erodes purchasing power, discourages savings, and creates economic instability. When prices rise rapidly, people may be less inclined to save money as the value of their savings will decrease over time. This can lead to lower levels of investment and slower economic growth. The goal is to find that Goldilocks zone, not too much inflation, not too little, but just right. Economists often refer to this as the optimal inflation rate. It is the rate at which inflation is high enough to encourage spending and investment, but low enough to avoid the negative consequences of high inflation. It's a constant challenge, but one that governments and central banks around the world are grappling with every day. They use a variety of tools and policies to try to manage inflation and keep it within the desired range. This can include adjusting interest rates, controlling the money supply, and implementing fiscal policies to influence economic activity. The balance is delicate and the stakes are high, as the right level of inflation can support economic growth and stability, while the wrong level can lead to economic hardship and uncertainty.